Yeah, I'll just stand here.
Okay.
So born on the raised on the Kalamazoo River. I listened to everything everybody said when it was closed after the spill. 1 week after we were told it was safe to swim and fish, I stepped in the river I grew up on, sank up to my waist in black oil, and I started throwing up for the next 3 days. Now in 2017, I have fluid in my lungs. I'm seeing a specialist for 4 of my organs. My heart is beating at 2/3 of its rate. I have organs that feel like I'm getting stabbed in my side, and they're so focused on my lungs and my heart that we don't have time to talk about it with my doctor. We're putting it off. There was an oil spill already! And that has not properly been addressed. I haven't come to speak to this board because last year I had to watch kids that I love go to bed that lived on the river and not wake up. I have no faith. I appreciate some of the people on this board, and I know some of you are really pushing, but it's been years already, just with Line 5. And I have watched enough people I love die. Die! There's people up on this board that are cool with keeping this going for money. I'm speaking to you. I have to visit with death every day. Its hand is behind me. I don't say that as a threat, that is my walk. You will face this walk. None of us get away from death. And as I get closer, I warn you, you do not want to have what you're going to have on your conscience. Maybe you don't get to know the kids that are dead, but you'll see them. This board can make every decision it wants to make. If there is not a timeline to shut this thing down by next year, I will start by doing it myself. And there will be others. Have 1 year to take a timeline. Because a lot of people have died already. Enough. Thank you.
Enbridge has had, just in Line 5, this line, some 29 spills in the past several years, and over its entire lakehead system, 1,000 spills in a 10-year period. And that belies the claims that we monitor, we've got sophisticated techniques.
So this is Line 5, the overland portion. So we've had 29 spills along the way. Starting in 1968, the first one was 300 barrels that were lost in Iron, then Gogebic County, Lake Gogebic. So that'd be here.
Either they know that these leaks are likely to occur and ignore them, or they don't know. And either
Either one is not good.
concept is is frightening.
After that,
Gogebic County again?
Yeah.
Okay. But that's a big one, because that was 6,800 equipment rupturing failure. Oh, shit.
These are overland, but it's very close to the Lake Michigan shore all along, crosses many vulnerable wetlands, crosses rivers, crosses plenty of places where if a spill occurred there would be catastrophic.
Gogebic County again,
Back to Gogebic County.
5,000 barrels. An oil release, fire, 2 people injured. And that's the notes on that.
You know, and one of the difficulties that you come into play with here is there's about 140 different commodities that could be shipped through that same line, okay? They say it's sweet crude, okay? It's a way of copping out and not getting into the details.
So what else is going through there?
Anthrazines and naphthalenes and a variety of substituted benzenes and substituted naphthalenes, anthracene. All of these have carcinogenic and very harmful effects on human body. Even when they are consumed in parts per billion levels. Now, when you have this pipeline break, not only the oil would spill, some of this will no doubt will get into the air.
Yeah, this thing has caused 500 residents involved with the evacuation, 100 nursing home residents, leaking from the Lakehead pipeline, and that a vapor cloud has formed and settled in. Wow, there's just a lot.
So
with
the
that.
vapor cloud, when they dealt with it, they burned it. Does it say that?
Yeah,
Okay.
everybody was evacuated, and it was ignited at 9:15 a.m. Now, in 2007, there were 2 spills, one in Rapid River and one in Mackinac City. They were both
And they're in the same
exact
year?
Same year, and the same cleanup treatment as well.
Okay.
And in 2009, Lewiston had another spill for .24 Lewiston. But the following year after Lewiston, in Lapeer, .24 barrels were spilled in Lapeer for equipment failure.
The same amount of oil?
The same amount of oil.
That's too weird. I mean,
Yeah.
and what's the reason? Equipment?
Equipment failure. Their equipment seems to fail often.
Yeah, they have equipment failures. What's the next one?
Marinisco.
Equipment failure. Half a barrel?
Yep.
Is that the last one?
That is the last
There?
one.
Okay.
That's almost 27,000 gallons, or barrels, which is 1.13 million gallons. How much are we projected to lose in these straits?
At any given time, 60,000 barrels.
60,000 barrels.
Yeah.
Almost 2.5 million gallons.
Yeah.
So, you know, money talks, right?
Right?
Everybody wants to know, well, how bad is bad?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's it going to cost?
If you took the numbers that came out of the University of Michigan oil spill study, where 700 miles of shoreline would be fouled, okay, that's a conservative estimate.
Yeah.
And even the 700 miles in that study is incorrect. It's
What do you think it
900
would be?
miles, okay?
Okay.
Remember, every hour, a million gallons essentially goes through those pipelines. And so, you know, we've also had the anchor strike. So imagine if both of those pipelines
Both were hit by this anchor.
both hit. You now can imagine what it would look like if you had an anchor strike and it ruptured both of those pipelines. If it took you, you know, 2.5 hours, you would be at 2.5 million gallons.
What are we drinking here, and tell me about it.
So this is one of my favorite summertime beers. Summertime's a great time to be here in Michigan.
Oh yeah.
I water ski almost every day. I water
Really?
skied this morning.
Cool.
It sucked to water ski on an oil slip.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
So that's the reason why we live here and we work here, because we love the area and what it has to offer. And I'm pretty pissed off that that's pretty much compromised any second of any hour of any day right now. This beer is a highlight of sort of that
So you crafted this
That
with
love-
summer and
Yeah.
the summer in Michigan in mind. The beer industry is the barometer by which we will be able to measure the impact of a lot of this stuff, because it's one industry that won't make it.
You know, the state of Michigan is bearing all of these risks. And what is our benefit out of this exactly? You know,
That's what I want to understand is like, how much money is it, or what's the deal that is so great that is better than compromising the lives and the livelihoods and the ecology of the great state of Michigan?
It must be
What is
even-
better than that?
It must be a pretty amazing package.
I would love to know.
I'd really like to
You
know.
know, we know that there is some economic benefit to the counties that the pipeline goes through. So Enbridge's numbers are 22 million to maybe 50 million. It depends because it keeps on
That's the benefit of keeping it here?
benefit of the property and sales tax.
Let's talk about the benefit for a second. Is there a benefit when it comes to, do they pay taxes, they have jobs, we can probably put a number on that.
how many jobs?
They've estimated, I think, between 100 and 150, 200.
Listen, so listen to what you're saying.
Okay, how many people do you employ?
North of 150, depending on the time of year.
That's the same number of people that Enbridge employs in Michigan.
And Shorts has done a lot for this town. It should be called Shortsville.
I can walk on a single street in any of these communities, these vacation communities that people come to from all over the country.
We're just counting how many fudge shops were along here.
And know that just walking a few blocks, that's 150 or 200 jobs.
If there were a disaster, the fudge economy up here would be completely screwed.
So to me, the fact that Enbridge is still making arguments about the loss of
The jobs.
150 to 200 jobs when you're talking about tens of thousands of jobs that will be gone forever.
The impact of an oil spill on the tourism industry and the second home industry is so profound. And I look at every parcel that is affected by that oil spill with the U of M study. There will be at least $1 billion worth of market value declines, and it could be as high as $3 billion in market value declines. And at the moment, Enbridge is only required to have liability and insurance of less than $1 million. They have a $940,000 liability coverage on this, which is absolutely asinine.
$1 million.
How have they let that sit there and not revised that issue?
This is
That's fundamentally.
It's so unbelievably. I don't even know what the word is right now.
It's absurd.
It is absurd.
Have you-
And remember how much Kalamazoo cost. Don't forget, $1.2 billion.
Well, and
in
there are
a
estimates now here.
Closed ecosystem.
And that's that we know where the water's going to go in that case, and in this one we have a whole range where
Exactly.
the water could carry that oil.
This is a high impact scenario, not a worst case scenario. But it's in the range of $6.3 billion. Almost $700 million would just be in natural resources damages. The impact to the tourist economy, $4.8 billion.
Now, why do these numbers seem so low to me? I mean, these numbers seem conservative to me. Are they?
And they are conservative.
Okay. This is what it would be within the first phase.
Yes. And then you have tremendous impact to the municipal drinking water supplies. You cannot drink the water.
So every time we do anything that endangers water's ability to support life, we're harming ourselves. And that means we're not respecting ourselves. And part of our teachings are that we're supposed to respect ourselves, we're supposed to respect all the other beings with whom we live, and we respect the natural world. And so when you have a lack of respect, you start to rationalize how it's okay to do this because, well, they're going to make a lot of jobs. Or it's okay to do this because of something else, or these rationalizations. And sometimes we sort of let ourselves as a society buy into those rationalizations, and then we stop thinking about what it means when we're disrespecting the water.
For the Odawa, we're water people. We not only travel on the water, but we would hold interactions with the water in ceremonial fashions. We would bury our dead in close proximity to the water, and I wouldn't learn about this until later with my line of work here at the tribe. And there's a word we had, Ninandoe Magan, all my relations. And Ninandoe Magan extends beyond, people. It's birds, animals, water, sky, sun, moon, everything in creation. At some level, you're related to.
Can you tell me the word again?
Ninandoe Magan.
How do you spell that?
I don't know. Some stories that I've learned along the way in my life, water plays a critical role in creation. And the creation of the Anishinaabe occurred on Mackinac Island. That's the first Anishinaabe out of the water. So it doesn't get I can't get any deeper than that. I can't go any further than that. It's the genesis point for the Anishinaabe in some beliefs.
And that's incredible because that's where we've been putting our focus is just immediately on that area. That is the area that is at highest risk in the case of an oil spill from Line 5.
I'm not a scientist, although I read a lot of scientific reports, and I'm not a lawyer, although I've hung out with them so often I've been accused of being one sometimes. But I have been in elected office. But I'm also, the thing is that's always guided me is our traditional teachings. When you're not respecting water, no matter where it is, then you're not living in harmony on the earth. You're not walking softly on Mother Earth. You're not following what we would consider our sacred duties. So having a situation where there is potentially this huge disaster that would affect all the organisms that live in the lake, the fish and all the other creatures that live in the lake, that upon which we not only we live with them, we may catch and eat them, but we also respect them and respect their environment and respect what it is. And so when we say water is life, well, water is life. Water is essential to life. And you can't drink oil, but you have to drink water. Mm-hmm. And so water and the oil are just two totally different things. And not just that, but any other types of things we might put in that water that would make it less than able to support life.
The real question is, can the tribes and perhaps others bring a lawsuit directly against Enbridge? Can we use the treaty reserved fishing right and the potential harm to that right to the property right the tribes have in our fishery reserves, which is really bizarre because the Indians wouldn't have looked at it this way.
Another issue I brought up earlier was the state law and policy and what happens when there's a construction site that they're putting down new pipelines and you have an inadvertent discovery of humanly remains. And trying to encourage the state to revisit the policy and the laws that say that it's abandoned property and try to give ownership back to either the tribes or maybe the families that are involved with that discovery.
Those islands are just full of our ancestors. Mackinac Island, Round Island, Garden, High, Beaver. I mean, the Odawa would load up their dead in their canoes and go out to these islands.
And folks are buried literally, I mean, you say near the water. Are we talking on the beach?
Yeah, I'm talking in a dune.
Okay.
Like right there. You have to see the water.
Yeah. Okay.
That's part of the deal.
And I would imagine that much of our shoreline is a burial site.
It changed my beach going experience forever.
It's changed my beach going experience forever.
All the way from Mackinac down to basically Grand River is burials. The whole shoreline.
This dangerous line runs through the Odawa Lake. It runs through your lake, and what is it? What does that threat represent to the tribe? I mean, what is and what's the tribe's
disrespect for the natural world?
Yeah,
that's what it is. I mean, it's simple. That's what it is. I guess the another example that I'd use is dealing with the treaty rights. Our ancestors, when they reserved fishing rights, for instance, didn't look at the water and say those are our fish. They reserved the right to fish. Now, reserved. In other words, we had all of the rights. We gave the U.S. some of them, and we kept our own. So it's not what we were given, these rights, but we kept these rights when we gave rights to someone else. But the deal with that is that when our ancestors looked out at the water, what they did is they reserved the right to fish. That meant they reserved the right to sing for the fish, to dance for the fish, to pray for the fish, to catch and eat the fish, to live with the fish, but to have a relationship with the fish. So what we have, and that's not just true for fish, okay? That's true across the board. We have a relationship with the natural world. So we don't think of it as having property. We don't think of it as so much as in that way. We think of it as a relationship. So anything that harms that relationship is potentially in my mind, is something that would violate treaty rights.
The courts have held that the treaty reserved resources, the ability to fish, hunt, gather plants, that those resources that are protected by treaty, the tribes actually have a property right in those.
What are you running up against when you bring that case? Because it sounds solid to me.
What we're running up against?
Yeah.
They issued a press release and they were bragging about how the combined worth of the two corporations is $164 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
we're not taking into
granted
account.
That's Canadian, so it's only 140.
Just.
But the point being that those friggin' pockets are so deep
Yeah.
that it's naive to assume that we could file something and prove our case.
And Mr. Bryson, in your written testimony, you talk about some of the recent changes to the agreement with the state of Michigan, and you quote here, you agreed as part of the November 17th agreement that the state of Michigan, with the state of Michigan, to voluntarily shut down the dual pipelines during periods of sustained adverse weather conditions where wave heights exceed 8 feet at the Straits crossing.
As soon as we became aware of the anchor strike from ATC, the pipeline was shut down. And we had people in incident command and we had people on the ground witnessing the weather. And the storm was building, of course, but even into Saturday night, the waves forecasted in the Straits and actuals were 2 to 3 feet. Sunday morning, we did have an unrelated power event in Superior and the lines were shut down. When we need to shut our system down, we shut it down.
But then initially, when you shut it down, you said it was because of an operational problem somewhere else. It wasn't because of the storm. And the skimmers that were on the site there, with dealing with the break from the cables, they were ineffective in seas greater than 2 to 3 feet. So the equipment that's on site, ready to operate, would be ineffective at 2 to 3 feet. So forget the 8 feet, whether or not you were violating the Michigan rule. So without eyes on, without having visual inspection, without knowing for certain, with a damaged pipe, if anything happened to that pipe, it would have been impossible for that equipment to get out with even those waves. So why would not the company say, we are going to show what stewards we are of the environment. We've got a damaged pipeline. We haven't had eyes on it. We know the waves are in excess of the skimmers that are on the site. We're going to shut this down to prove to the people of Michigan that we are responsible. That did not happen. Those are the facts of what happened, right?
We did shut down on Sundays in the worst of the storm.
Why did it take over 2 weeks to actually get a submersible to take a look at that? Now, I understand that it didn't even arrive on scene for a couple of weeks.
I could confirm the actual date, but I think the important part to understand about our system, and as David said, you can't see the outside of the pipe because they're buried. So in today's technology, and part of the reason why our incident rates are decreasing, it's because of internally looking at the pipe, and that is the kind of work we do by sending these highly sophisticated tools on the inside of the pipe. The external analysis of the pipe from the ROV essentially just validated what we knew from the inside of the pipe.
So I'm not an engineer, but I would think it's really hard for an anchor to hit a buried pipeline on land. Is that correct? So the question that Dr. Schreberg answered, will you provide full documentation of the damage sustained to Line 5 by the anchor strike, including all video and images? Will you commit to doing that to the public? Yes. You will? Well, that's great. Why haven't you not done that to this point?
Well, we've been involved with PHMSA, with the Coast Guard, Unified Command.
So this was shocking. So Enbridge has, of course, they sent out an ROV, a remote operated vehicle, to fully assess the line, to take images. So you've got video, you've got images from that. These should be public record.
Although we're here today because of concerns about pipeline safety, I must acknowledge, as you did, that pipeline safety has greatly improved over the last 2 decades. Today, energy products are safely moved by pipeline 99.997% of the time.
I mean, PHMSA has been an irrelevant non-entity in these proceedings and will continue to be. We cannot rely on the federal government.
It was through these inline inspection runs that Enbridge performed that they were able to actually identify the dents. Enbridge.
First, I want to know how can, because it sounds as if Enbridge voluntarily reports a lot of information, if I'm hearing you correctly, they're reporting that. To what extent can that actually be independently verified by your inspectors and other staff? Or are we just taking the word of Enbridge, or are we actually verifying that?
Well, Senator, we're verifying the data that Enbridge provides. We do not independently do those inline inspections, so we have to use the data that's available from the operators.
PHMSA relies on Enbridge's data themselves.
Exactly.
Our engineering team will look at that data.
PHMSA's oversight has been really, really lacking, even though there's a very sensitive area right here.
Is it fair to say that we can look at every mile of pipeline, every bit of data? No, that's not.
And then he says, well, there's there's thousands of miles of pipelines. We can't watch them all the time.
I don't think they watch any of them.
We tend, though, to focus a lot of our time on those operators that we have the most concerns about.
Well, obviously some areas are more sensitive than others. You can't watch everything all of the time, but I think it's fair to say that you will not find a more sensitive area anywhere in the United States.
Man, the PHMSA is so understaffed and so under budgeted, and there was so little oversight before their budget got slashed that they basically can barely keep up with the paper that they receive.
Has PHMSA ever ordered the decommissioning and removal of an oil pipeline in the United States of America?
Yeah! Shut it down! Yeah, shut it down!
We have not.
Yeah!
Yeah, so the state of Michigan can get by just fine without Line 5. That's the conclusion from this.
Line 5 carries to market Michigan produced light crude oil, helps supply refineries in the greater Detroit area, and helps meet approximately 55% of Michigan's statewide propane demand.
Propane's only used generally seasonally, right? So in late fall and in the winter. And what happens too, I think there's this notion that Enbridge has maybe helped put out there that somehow Line 5 is hooked up to your houses and providing propane. That's not what's happening. No. Line 5 has one point where natural gas liquids, which are the raw materials of propane, are offloaded and turned into propane. You can get those same raw materials to that same point in the absence of Line 5.
How does propane arrive at your house?
Generally by truck.
A truck?
Yeah. And the point is, you can do the exact same things that you need to keep the state going, whether it's propane, whether it's gasoline, whether it's getting oil that is produced in Michigan to market. You can do all those things without Line 5. That's the bottom line.
The possibility of a rupture in Line 5 and the oil spill that would result from such a rupture in the Straits of Mackinac is a risk that is simply too much to ask for those that count on clean water in the Great Lakes for drinking, for business, and for recreation. It is not in the interest of the residents of Michigan to continue to allow this pipeline to operate, and it would be best if this pipeline were shut down.
The agreement that the governor announced last week
was something that was in the making, as you know, for months, if not years. It's basically the end of the Pipeline Safety Advisory Board under the governor, the current governor, Snyder.
Governor Snyder, from my own limited interactions with him and from what I know about overall, he's a methodical guy. He's not generally a guy who's going to start a process that's supposed to lead to a decision, and then at a midpoint or before the end point make that decision, right? So what the governor said is, we're going to keep going through our process, which is systematically analyzing the risks and alternatives, and then I will make a decision at the end of that. Well, that's the moment that we're at now. So their thought is you take all of those things that lay in the bottom of straits and put them in one giant tunnel with a train that runs through the middle so that you can access it.
We're not talking about a $500 million tunnel here. We're talking about billions, aren't we? This thing keeps getting bigger.
Enbridge has said that they could build a tunnel just for Line 5 for $500 million. I think that's insanely low.
But in short, this agreement basically sets up a time frame for Enbridge to look at a tunnel. If they don't like what they see, if they don't like the price tag, if they don't like the parameters in building it, then they can just go back to their old easement and nothing changes.
So it's a non-binding agreement. Correct. There was nothing in there that is binding?
Not that we can tell. In fact, I mean, if Enbridge just decides that this tunnel agreement or this tunnel idea is not feasible from a fiscal perspective, they can walk away at any moment. They could walk away tomorrow, and we're at square one. I mean, we're back at the very beginning.
Problem with the tunnel plan, nobody knows if it's feasible or not, because it's just right now it's like basically scratched on the back of a napkin. The problem with the plan is that no matter whether it's feasible or not, is it's going to take decades and probably over $1 billion to put in place.
It's fine. You can look at a tunnel. If that's how you want to consider alternatives, that's fine. But you have to act on the current risk, which is the pipeline on open waters, and the decommissioning process has to happen now. That isn't even a remote discussion of this agreement.
The line continues running throughout.
Exactly.
They don't have any incentive whatsoever.
There's no incentive. There's incentives for them to make sure that the process is delayed.
Is there a design in place, for one thing?
No. So that's phase 2, 3 of reviewing a tunnel is actually developing a design and then going through some of the risk assessments. So none of that has been done.
Is such a thing feasible? A tunnel, a mega tunnel like this?
It wouldn't be record-breaking, but it would be darn close. They don't account for environmental risks, delays with permitting, legal challenges, risks with just using equipment that deep in that location, frackouts. So that's when you're actually boring the tunnel, you have fissures that go up into the lake bed and release drilling fluid.
If the tunnel idea was to move ahead, then can Enbridge afford this?
Well, two questions. As a company, Enbridge has quite ambitious growth goals. And they're also paying a large dividend, and they've also got large capital expenditures. So these are all competing for Enbridge's cash. And so when you come back to 65-year-old Line 5, it is a very low priority in the scheme of things at Enbridge.
So, I mean, the fear here is that we're stuck with a high-risk pipeline for a decade or more, and that the only way it gets, under the tunnel plan, the only way that it gets addressed is if taxpayers pony up $1 billion. Michigan taxpayers pony up $1 billion. The option changes, the dynamics change if you shut the pipeline down now. If you shut the pipeline down now and you say, okay, this pipeline is shut down, we're shutting it down now because of the risk, and we will entertain a proposal from Enbridge to build a safe tunnel all the way underneath. At that point, the incentives switch. At that point, Enbridge wants to do, presumably, would want to figure out a way to continue to move oil in a cheap way, and they'd be on the hook for paying for it. But you can't see that happening as long if there's oil still flowing through the straits right now. The oil has to stop flowing through the straits for any option other than the current option to be realistic.
But the imminent and present danger of this pipeline is what we need to face up to and hold our public officials accountable to. When you look at it as just a way of hiding the facts from the public, deflecting people from the facts, I think it's an absolute disgrace.
This agreement in particular almost makes all of our work for the collective 5-6 years? No. I mean, it puts all the balls in Enbridge's court. They can do whatever they want. And if there's anything this administration should have learned from the last 5 or 6 years in dealing with this issue, it's that this company is not one that can be trusted to manage its infrastructure properly. And so why would we hand them agreement that potentially weakens the existing easement and gives them all authority to do whatever they want for the next 7 to 10 years?
I think the irony is that the governor who got this huge black eye from the Flint water fiasco is going to saddle the next governor, be it Mr. Schuette or Gretchen Whitmer, is going to saddle the Flint water crisis with them, and the Enbridge Line 5 thing. So Snyder, having had this tumultuous relationship with Schuette, if Schuette's going to be the next governor, Schuette's going to have the burden of this, and Snyder will have had his ultimate revenge of passing this on to Schuette. You know, when you think of what these guys committed to in signing up for their respective offices, they are feathering Enbridge's nest at the cost of the citizens that put them there.
You're where a lot of this story began.
Yeah.
That when I say, hey, when did you first hear about Line 5? And they have said it's Beth Wallace's report.
Yeah. What's beautiful about this issue is that so many people care about the Great Lakes. It has become such a bipartisan conversation that it is no longer environmentalists being upset about an issue. It has to get worse before it gets better.
Really?
And we're kind of there. It's happening in the state of Michigan. I think Line 5 is kind of a siloed version of what's maybe happening nationally, where we have so much opposition to this issue, to this pipeline, but the political will is just not there. And they're going to hopefully hear from people about this. They're going to hear from people about how bad this agreement is. November is going to hit, and they're going to understand that they need to start taking constituents, businesses, other politicians seriously. I mean, the people that have been outspoken about this, I do hope that it becomes a reality that the public voice and the public concern needs to be taken a lot more seriously than a foreign corporation.
I tend to try to think in the bigger picture a lot of times. And so I am definitely think Line 5 needs to be shut down at the Straits. We shouldn't be waiting for it to spring a leak before we spring into action.
Right on.
We're taught to consider the results of our actions or the consequences of our actions through a time period long enough to encompass 7 generations. Each one of us is someone's 7th generation. And what did those people do 7 generations ago that had you and I sitting here talking about this right here? There were things that our ancestors did that guided our lives in such a way that we ended up being here talking about this. And what are we doing that are going to be guiding those people coming 7 generations from now? So, we have this gift from our ancestors, but we also are bestowing gifts on our descendants. These teachings, and when you think about this long-range thought, it's political to some extent. It's what laws do we need to help pass and things. But it's also, what are we teaching another generation? What kind of things are we teaching them to, so that they have good examples to follow, and that and also, you're always right at that moment. 7 generations, you're right in the middle.